Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the Philly Factor. I'm your host, Paul Perrello. Well, it's no surprise that if you're new to the Philadelphia area, if you're a lifelong resident of the greater Philadelphia area, that our city and the surrounding suburbs is a wealth of museums. Whether it's in downtown Philadelphia, whether it's an old city out in the suburbs, there are great museums to visit and to tour. I happened to find a really unique museum, which is located out in Oaks, Pennsylvania. It is the American Treasure Tour Museum. Ross Brackman is the director of the museum, and he joins us on this edition of the Philly Factor. And Ross, I want to thank you for your time and welcome you to the program.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Paul.
This could very well be one of the best kept secrets in the greater Philadelphia area because when I saw it pop up, I guess on social media, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, where is this place? And being familiar, lifelong resident of the Philadelphia area, I know where Oaks is, but I had really never heard about this museum until recently, within the past year or so. So it is one of the best kept secrets in our area. So how long has the museum been around?
Well, we opened officially in 2009. So that said, when we opened, we were just exclusive for bus tours and things like that. Now we're open Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. On Friday and Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., and then Sunday, 10 to 5. So we are a bit of a secret, and that's partly because we're really hard to categorize. We're a popular culture museum with a tram. So our structure, we're on the second floor of an old BF Goodrich tire factory too. So if you're looking for that kind of grand entrance you see in downtown Philadelphia at most of the museums there, it's just not happening. But we are kind of a hidden gem, and we're here to make our secret known, I guess.
Now, for our viewers at home, you may notice that Ross's picture, his camera, is a little shaky, and there's a reason for that. Because Ross is going to take us on a walking tour, not a complete walking tour of the museum, but he is going to take us through the many artifacts that are there at the museum. So before we begin, Ross, I mean, it's as you said, it's kind of hard to categorize everything that's that encompasses what the museum is all about. But can you at least give us an idea as to what the oldest item there might be, and perhaps one of the newest items that is now there at the collection?
Sure. Well, the collection itself has been working, or I guess it started in about 1960, 1970. And that said, it started with hot rods. So classic cars. And one of our oldest cars, which is also one of my favorites, is a 1905 Franklin. And if you've never heard of the Franklin, they didn't survive the Great Depression. So, they were in the first quarter of the 20th century, the hand crank classic cars from Syracuse, New York. Actually, no, I believe Rochester. But so we have a number of cars from the early aughts, including a Sears motor buggy, Leonard, a Woods Mobilette, cars people probably aren't too familiar with today, as well as the International Motor Company trucks, which would evolve into Mack. That said, we also have one of the largest collections of automatic music machines in the world. Things like Nickelodeons, probably best familiar with the band organ, the kind of instrument machines you hear at the carousels and circuses and things like that. I am currently in our music room, which houses our Nickelodeons. And we do have a tram ride, which reveals about 70% of the tour. So you've got 30% you explore on foot, including the Nickelodeons, the Raggedy Ann collection, the telephones. And if we have time, I'll show you a bunch of that stuff. And then the tram ride takes you through the animatronics, a lot of local signage. If you were ever visiting the King of Prussia Mall back in the 90s, when they did their major revamp, we got a lot of their old signs, which a lot of times just get thrown into the trash. So we're happy to kind of have that piece of local history. But we are located probably 10 minutes from the mall. So that's kind of a frame of reference too, if you've never heard of Oaks, which is not uncommon either, because it's a pretty small town between Audubon and Phoenixville.
Right. So I guess my next question is, do you, not you personally, do people at the museum go out and I hate to use the term dumpster dive looking for some of this stuff, or people knocking on the door of the museum and say, "Hey, I have this old, Singer sewing machine that I think would be perfect for your collection." Is it a combination of both, or how do you find the artifacts that go into the museum?
Well, like I said, or maybe I didn't mention it yet. This is a privately owned collection, and it is one man's life work, bringing everything together. That said, now that people are visiting us a little bit more and we're kind of on a lot more radars, when we have somebody who's local, in fact, this happened in the fall, a nice couple from Phoenixville called us and said, "Hey, we have a classic washer and dryer from Maytag that we just don't have space for. And it's probably from the 30s with the classic ringer and everything." And they gave it to us. And so we put that right next to the other classic Maytag machines we have out on display. So that has been happening more and more, and we try never to say no. The only thing we really don't have space for, which is unfortunately something that a lot of families also don't have space for, is player pianos, which complement our Nickelodeons, but they're just so big and difficult to move around. But that said, we have accepted one of my favorite things recently, besides the Maytag, was an exact replica of the Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark of the Covenant.
Wow.
So you wouldn't know it wasn't in the movie unless you asked. But
Okay.
and our collector actually brings things in as well. He just brought in some Christmas deer that light up and kind of blind you a little bit. So, and we also got the sign from a local Kmart that just closed its doors, I guess, 2 or 3 years ago. But the building had just been revamped into a Target. So we got the signage, and now we can remember Kmart the way most people on the East Coast do.
I may have dated myself by saying a Singer sewing machine wasn't mine, but it was my mother's, who got it from my grandmother, sort of thing. And it's funny because some people say, "What do you mean Singer sewing machine?" But if you know what a Singer sewing machine is, you know what I'm talking about,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
honestly, I don't know if we have any singers offhand, but that's not to say there's not one that's kind of hidden somewhere
sure.
behind our bumper cars, because of course we have bumper cars.
Right. How many items in total are there at the museum?
I wish I could give you a number. I can tell you that we have very close to 300,000 pieces of music, and that includes sheet music, paper rolls from player pianos and band organs, and record albums, CDs, mostly record albums. So, yeah, thousands and thousands of pieces of anything and everything you can imagine. Over 300 hobbyist built model airplanes suspended from the ceiling. Many posters, many of them hand done, but also movie posters. And most of those tend to date anywhere from the silent era into the 1990s.
Wow. Before we go on our walking tour here, what I got from the website, and I'm sure once somebody steps foot into the museum there, this is really a step back in time. I mean, it's not just about pop culture, but it really is going back to time. Like I referred to the Singer sewing machine and how I remember, my mother and then of course my grandmother using the Singer sewing machine. So I'm guessing when people just on the website alone, I was like, "Oh man, I remember that." Or look at the Raggedy Ann doll. I think my sister may have had that. Or I mean, so it really is a snapshot in time. It really is a step back in time for so many people, and for others who may not realize that these things ever existed before. It's really an eye-opening experience.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Honestly, part of the fun that I have is when I'm standing behind the desk and people who have never been here before, who maybe were recommended by a friend to check us out, come up the stairs past our giant chandelier that was removed from the Warwick Hotel in Philadelphia and is in the most nonsensical place you could imagine, in an elevator shaft near inside of a tire factory. But they come upstairs and just start looking around, and they can't really move because they're just overwhelmed by sensory overload. But what I love is when a family of 3 generations comes and the grandparents are focusing, say, on the classic cars, and the parents are focusing on the movies posters from the 1990s and 80s or whatever. And then the kids are looking at all the stuffed animals and the teddy bears. I mean, everybody found something that they connected with. And to me, that's just the greatest joy watching people get excited about their own personal connections.
Sure. All right. So we've been putting this off. We've been teasing it a long time now. So why don't we get started a little bit here on our walking tour and tell us where you're at right now
Sure.
and what are some of the items that are behind you?
Yeah, I am. As I said, I'm in the music room, and the other side of the tour where the tram ride is the toy box. And because we have limited time, we're going to focus on the music room today. But if you come in, take our tram ride, you'll see the classic cars, the animatronics, which you may know, like, I guess the most famous animatronics are the Disney It's a Small World, all the little animated figures. But I am currently surrounded by our Nickelodeons. So this one over here, for example, this is from the Peerless Company. This dates to the 1920s. And all of these machines work off of paper roll technology as well as bellows. So they are pre-digital, but that basically means that this is the beginning, the inspiration for the computer age. Wow. So here, I will turn this one on right here. This one is the newest Nickelodeon in the collection. This was made in the 1980s. And when it was first created by people who basically loved these kinds of machines, it was about $70,000, give or take. So wow. These were very expensive machines when they were brand new in the 1920s and remain expensive today for the, I guess, the fan. Now, sometimes Zoom doesn't really work as far as the machines go, so let me know if you can't hear, but I do hope you can.
All right. Yeah, we heard a glimpse of it there for a little bit, and then it seemed to go away.
I'm sorry.
We heard just a little bit, and then it seemed to fade away.
Yeah, the system tends to mute them. So you could see though that the machine was actually plucking the strings on the banjo. So the technology in these was so sophisticated, and considering the first banjos were patented in the United States in the 1890s, it's really pretty amazing. And it's easy for people to assume that back then we didn't understand technology because electricity was new, cars were new, but the grasp they had was really quite exceptional.
Wow.
So one thing I know you'll be able to see are some of the doll houses and dolls we have here. And, you know, as I've said, some things connect for some people, they don't for others. And that's part of what makes it so fun. But this is a dollhouse, my favorite piece in there. I'll see if I can show it to you. There is a little chess set, and each chess piece is maybe a quarter of an inch tall. So wow, I don't know, I kind of get caught up in some of that. And then this machine here, I'll turn it on. You may not be able to hear it, but it is a beautiful machine, and you can see the light system that they created for it. And again, this was 1916, 1917.
Now, Ross, do we know when these items are brought to the museum, like if I were to walk through there and look at some of these machines, is there an indication, or is there a bit of history of where the items came from, or the founder of the museum is going out and collecting these things? Are they being donated just for display, or is there, like with these doll houses, I'm sure these must have come from many families, either in the Philadelphia area or maybe from around the world. But do we have a little glimpse of the history behind these items?
Many of them we do. Unfortunately, not all of them. And that's partly because what happened a lot of times is people would sell them to auction houses, and then the auction houses would sell them to our collector and not provide the information. Now, this one behind us that I'm standing here, you can see this is essentially a Newport, Rhode Island style mansion. This one was made in Harrisburg by a husband for his wife. And so he built this in the basement of the house, and it was on the cover of many magazines at the time because of its detail. And I mean, you can see every one of these bricks was hand placed. There are over 5,000 bricks. I mean, it's just very impressive, the amount of work that he put into this, and love, obviously. So it's I'm sorry, my lights turned off and I didn't realize it. So yeah, I mean,
that's okay. It's fine. Yeah,
you can see so many of the things here were made with love, and that's part of what we enjoy. Even if it doesn't connect with you specifically, you can appreciate the dedication to it. And I've
Yeah.
moved on to a little bit stranger collection here, and this was made by a middle school art teacher from Royersford, Pennsylvania, named Bob Amrod. And Bob sold it to us. I guess he wanted to see his dining room table or something. And we had it here for about 3 years before he refilled his house with more miniatures, because this is just what he loved to do. But so you'll see he has Star Trek, Star Wars, action figures, things like that. He has all kinds of different themes. I mean, this is a very stream of consciousness collection that he's put together, but it's not only honoring him. And one of my favorite pieces with this is when we get former students or former co-workers of Bob's who come in, and Bob has since passed away, so they can come in and appreciate what he did and his contribution and improving the lives of his students. So
Sure.
Here we have a collection of old radios.
Oh, wow.
These were all sold to our collector by the family of a man who restored every single radio. That was his passion. And then when he passed away, it all came to us. So the family is able to visit it, and visitors who have an appreciation for that kind of technology can come see it. And of course, now radios are all in your phone. So nobody really sees this stuff anymore.
Yeah, mentioned to a teenager today about a radio, and they're like, what's a radio?
Right.
You know,
Oh,
and,
that happens a lot with the radios, with our typewriters. I'm glad vinyl records are coming back, because we don't have to explain those to everybody, but you'd still be surprised.
yeah, for sure. Was there ever an item, and I'm sure there's not just one, but excuse me, an item that took you by surprise? I mean, we talk about that wow factor, is that, you either walk through the collection one day and maybe it's been there all along, but you just didn't notice it, or it comes into the museum and you're like, wow, that is amazing. There's got to be an item or two, or probably more, that give you that reaction to, wow, look at this.
Oh, I couldn't count on two hands how many pieces do that for me here. And I mean, again, everybody's struck by different pieces. I love the old technology myself, and some of the stranger pieces of art that we get here.
Right.
Probably my favorite recent piece, which had been in the building for years, that I just discovered in a box, was an animatronic selling shoes, leather kind of moccasin shoes, and it was on a rotating table. And it was the same character in three different outfits wearing the same shoes, showing how versatile these amazing shoes were. So, never heard of the company that had this produced, but now it's part of our memorabilia.
Yeah.
And another one is the Sweetheart Soap babies. Again, I'd never heard of Sweetheart Soap, but they created these animatronic babies that are bigger than your average baby, sitting in a carriage or like a wicker basket or something, and they move and they're happy and they're squirming in bed because they're so clean. So
I know just a short while ago you passed the Raggedy Ann and Raggedy Andy dolls. Again, talk about something from childhood. I don't know if they're still being produced or if people even understand the history of the dolls, but how many of them? Because I think I also saw pictures from the website. There are not just a few, there are quite a number of Raggedy Ann and Andy dolls.
Oh, there are well over 2,000 dolls here.
Wow.
And this was, to your question earlier, this is actually a private woman's collection. She was out of Tampa, Florida, and she had to downsize. I don't know why, but it was decided that she needed to get rid of her Raggedy Anns and Andys, did not have the heart to break up her collection.
Sure.
So she actually donated them to the Treasure Tour on the condition that we share them, which was, of course, something we were happy to do. And she can come and visit her dolls whenever she wants, knowing that they're all together here. And to me, that's part of what makes it special, is that she still has that connection to the dolls, and anybody who appreciates Raggedy Ann and Andy can come see them. But yeah, you'll notice we have Christmas ornaments, aprons, books, all sorts of stuffed animal or stuffed Raggedy Ann and Andys. I mean, again, this was her passion. And I guess that on some level is what we're all about, is preserving passion.
Is there, I mean, everybody at some time will probably claim that they are a collector of something, whether it's Matchbox cars or whether it's Disney memorabilia or Raggedy Ann, Raggedy Andy. I mean, is there? Uh, I mean, where do you draw the line between something that is a collection or a collectible and something that perhaps may not have a spot in not only your museum but any museum for that? I mean, there's a fine line. I think most people would agree there's a fine line between something that is highly prized and collectible and something that winds up in the dumpster. And I guess that's sort of relevant or relative to the person that's holding on to the possession and the person that wants the possession.
Well, you've heard the phrase "one man's treasure is another man's trash," that kind of
Sure.
thing, and you hear about people who have saved newspapers for the last 70 years. There's a fascination with old newspapers, but we probably wouldn't take something like that because there's just no way to do honor to it.
Sure.
But I personally think that every collection, within reason, nothing too fetishist, if you will, has its charm and its place. I mean, we are a family museum that is happy to celebrate pretty much anything that people can connect with. We have all sorts of model cars, the die cast. We don't have too many dedicated to NASCAR, but that's partly because our collector wasn't into professional racing as much as he was into the classic vehicles, things like that. So, but that said, there are people who have their houses filled with those sorts of things, and there's, I say good for them, and I hope they're happy with it, because to me, collecting is part of what gives you meaning on a day-to-day basis. And I think for our collector, as for many collectors, the hunt is so much a part of the process.
Sure.
And then once you've acquired it, then you can sit back and enjoy it. But then there's usually something else you want to find too.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I think that's what the charm is. And people, when they come here, they may connect to, say, we have our phone exhibit over here we're looking at. And this is another one. This was donated to us by a couple out of King of Prussia. The collection, if you can tell, is huge. And their house was a little bit too small for it. So they come whenever they want to see their phones, and we get to share them with people who don't really know what phones like this are anymore.
Yeah. I'm just looking at some of them, and they're like, yeah, some of them I remember, and some of them, you see in old time movies.
Here's one of my favorites.
Is that Alf?
That sure is.
It's an Alf phone.
We've got Alf. We've got a Keebler elf. We've got Kermit, Snoopy, Mickey Mouse. And if you remember the old Bloom County cartoon, we have Opus over here too, next to Sprout.
It's amazing. And as you walk through and we see some of these displays, we see the lights that are on, we see, showcases. I mean, just give us an idea. How do you, and I know it's not just you, but
sure,
how do you stay on top of maintaining all of these things and making sure that when a tour comes through, that the displays are doing what they're supposed to be doing and the lights are on in the showcases? I mean, that into itself has got to be a job.
It can be. I mean, we don't have all of the machines working, of course. We just don't have the power sources for that. And we essentially have one man who comes in to work on our Nickelodeons and band organs. He comes in maybe once every 3 or 4 weeks, and we'll give him a list. Hey, the Wurlitzer's down today. Can you give it a look, or something like that? So we only have a representation of the pieces on that are functioning. But otherwise, we just try to keep up on dusting, which is it's a full-time job for people who don't have that much time to do it.
Yeah.
And over here, we have, actually, this is not ours. This is all part of the Music Box Society International's collection. And the Music Box Society are passionate music box owners. And you're asking about some of the older pieces in the collection. Every one of these music boxes is over 100 years old. I think it's very safe to say that. And I believe the oldest piece we have on display is one of our music boxes dated to 1820. That said, I've never heard it play. We just have it on display, but still, it's pretty amazing to me that we have something that old here, and it looks like it could have been made yesterday. All of these pieces are in excellent shape, but we don't get to play them all. In fact, a lot of times you have to specially request it. If you come in and you really want to hear one of the music boxes, we certainly do what we can, but we just don't have the opportunity to play them too often. But they are, each one of them is a piece of art.
Yeah. We have about 3 minutes left in the
Okay.
program, but I know we've only probably have toured just a small portion of the museum. But what is I guess, the mission, or what is the intent of the museum for people that come and visit? I mean, people may just be coming to do something on a weekend, something different, something, they're looking for something to do on a weekend. What is it that you hope people, when they come there, they take away from the museum?
Well, when we're asked why the owner has collected all of these things, which does certainly happen, the answer is very simple. He has collected all of these because they make him happy. And when he decided to allow us to open the collection for tours, it was basically with the same idea. The goal is we want to trigger positive memories. We want to bring families together to connect over something that maybe grandpa remembers, or maybe mom wants to share with her kid from when she was a kid. Kids today have no idea what a rotary phone is, to what we were talking about. So they can see them here. They may even be able to touch one if they ask, at the front desk, that sort of thing. So we really just want people to connect with the past, understanding it's a very positive environment that really has just a good vibe to it. At least that's what we're going for.
Yeah. Um, Again, tell us the days the museum's open and the hours that the museum's open.
Sure. We're open Friday and Saturday from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. The last tram ride is at 6:30. So it's 10:30 every hour on the half hour through 6:30. Sundays we're open 10 to 5, with the last tram ride happening at 3:30. And then, of course, we give our folks a chance to walk around and explore, because there is so much to see. So we have little historical factoids surrounding the place, but of course not on every piece. That's something that we hope to have in the future, but we try to make it light and try to have a lot of fun. And the tram ride is narrated, so you're not just sitting there looking at stuff. We tell some stories of the highlights of the collection that just you might not know on your own, like the first electric wheelchair is here on display, or one of the first.
Yeah. Well, this has been a fascinating half hour, and I am so glad that you joined us, Ross. And I'm also equally glad that your Wi-Fi, our Wi-Fi, the Zoom call, everything went according to plan. So it shows you that technology has come a long way from those early computers that we all heard about. But thanks so much for your time, and hopefully I'll get out there one of these days and take a trip out there and take a tour for myself. And I want to thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, and you really do have to come out and bring your family.
I will do that. Ross, thanks so much. Until the next time, ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul Perrello. Thanks so much for being with us on this edition of the Philly Factor. We'll catch you next time around.